بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. Amen. Today's topic is about the importance of seeking knowledge. We are still commenting on, or let's say reflecting on, some of the stories from Safahat min Sabr al-Ulama, the book of patience, which Sheikh al-Fattah Abu Ghudda rahimahullah has written from his collection of many biographies from top great scholars in our ummah. So today's topic will be on the importance of seeking knowledge and the journey which they have put in place to seek knowledge. So without doubt, when we go through the Quran, there are many verses talking about the importance of knowledge. One of these verses, for instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون, which is in Surah number 39, verse number 9. Allah Azza wa Jal says, قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب. So are they equal, those who know and those who do not know? Definitely they are not equal. So Allah Azza wa Jal is saying that they are not equal, people of knowledge and people with no knowledge. As well, in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beautifully, he said, يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم. In Surah al-Mujadala, verse number 11, he said subhanahu wa ta'ala, يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات. So Allah will elevate those among you who believe and those who has been given knowledge into ranks. So this ayah is saying that people with Iman will be elevated among the normal people with no Iman. So we have people no Iman, people with Iman elevated, people with knowledge elevated above into many ranks, depends on their knowledge, sincerity, etc., etc. So it goes without saying that these verses are showing the importance of knowledge and the rank of the scholars and the responsibility as well. One of the Qudsi hadith which we have started with in our series, the Hadith al-Qudsiyya series, it talks about the responsibility of the scholars, that one of the 4 people who will be thrown into hellfire on the day of judgment, may Allah protect all of us from that, are the scholars, those who delivered the knowledge not for the sake of Allah, for other purposes. In this ayah that I've recited, Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying that the people of knowledge are into ranks and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Surah Taha, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, O my Lord, increase me in knowledge. So this word zidni, you won't find elsewhere in the Quran, but in this ayah, zidni, increase me. So I didn't say increase me in money, increase me in wealth, increase me in children, no, status, no. It's increase me in knowledge. Without doubt, we don't worship knowledge, we worship Allah Azza wa Jal, but because knowledge is our way to Allah, the more we know, the more we should be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what the ayah is telling us here, that we should be asking Allah Azza wa Jal to increase our knowledge, not for the sake of knowledge itself, i.e. you go and boast about it and say to others, we read this, we entered the circle, we've done this or that. No, not really. It's about, does this knowledge reflect in our action, in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on our character when we deal with others? If yes, then alhamdulillah, that's great. If not, then there's something wrong. And as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Those who truly fear Allah are the scholars. So Allah talks about a very high level. So the more we know, the more we should fear Allah, the more we should be closer to Allah, the more we should be aware of His attributes subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. And when we open the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, plenty of hadith about knowledge and the importance of knowledge, and to the extent that the scholars already composed books on the virtues of seeking knowledge. Books, not just one, plenty of books. So I'll pick some of the narrations from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For instance, in Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ma yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din." Whomsoever Allah wishes good for, He gives him deep understanding of religion. So this deep understanding of religion, it's about the knowledge. The more you know, the more you are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we understand. And this hadith is clear. It's about fiqh. Fiqh in Arabic, it's about fahm. Fahm, which is understanding. So we don't just have the parrot education, you just memorize and recite, or no. It's understanding. يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. If you want Allah to give you good, then focus on understanding the deen, not just learning the deen. So understanding the deen is important. Yes, so this is what we see in this hadith. And of course, we can spend the whole session on this hadith alone. The other hadith, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, beautiful hadith. This is one of my favorites. On the authority of Abu Ghudda radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man salaka tariqan yabtaghi fihi ilman, سهل الله له طريقا إلى الجنة." So whomsoever is following a path in quest of knowledge, Allah will make the path of Jannah easy to him. So the path of knowledge is the path of Jannah. Beautiful hadith. And then the hadith goes on to say, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ رِضًا بِمَا صَنَعَ. And the angels would lay down their wings for the knowledge seeker in approval what he is seeking. وَإِنَّ الْعَالِمَ لَيَسْتَغْفِرُ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So the scholar, all what's on earth and in the heaven, they will seek forgiveness for the scholar. حتى الحيتان في الماء, even the fish in the sea. وفضل العالم على العابد كفضل القمر على سائر الكواكب. And the virtue of the scholar over the rest of the people is like the virtue of the moon over the rest of the planets. Its light, its benefit. And then the end of the hadith, وَالْعُلَمَاء إِنَّ الْعُلَمَاءَ وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاء, and the scholars are the heirs of the prophets. وَإِنَّمَا الْأَنْبِيَاء وَإِنَّ الْأَنْبِيَاءَ لَمْ يُوَرِّثُوا دِينَارًا وَلَا دِرْهَمًا. So the prophets did not leave behind money to be inherited, but they have left the knowledge. So whomsoever has taken this knowledge has taken an ample share of that. It's a beautiful hadith. In another hadith in Sunan Ibn Majah, this hadith was in Tirmidhi. In Sunan Ibn Majah, Prophet ﷺ says, طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. It is obligatory. Which knowledge? Definitely on the top of the list is the sacred knowledge. But we cannot dismiss any beneficial knowledge is required, and it's an obligation for us to learn. And knowledge and accordance is divided into two main divisions. Fard Ain knowledge and Fard Kifaya knowledge. Fard Ain knowledge, which is an individual obligation on each and every person of us, should know. The Fard Kifaya knowledge is the communal obligation. One of the people in the community, two people in the community should know and learn about this, and then that's enough in order to suffice themselves and to be independent. And the last hadith which I want to share with you is the narration of Anas that the Prophet ﷺ said, إذا مررتم برياض الجنة فارتعوا قالوا وما رياض الجنة قال صلى الله عليه وسلم حلق الذكر. If you Anas is saying that the Prophet ﷺ is saying, when you pass by the gardens of paradise, then feast, sit down and eat and enjoy. And they asked the Prophet ﷺ, what are the gardens of Jannah, Ya Rasulullah? He said, the circles of remembrance. The circles of remembrance, i.e. the circles of knowledge, where the name of Allah will be mentioned and He will be remembered, and the people will know about Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the first part, if you want, of this session. It's talking about the importance of knowledge in the Quran. It talks about the importance of knowledge in the Sunnah. Let's see how did the prophets and the companions value the knowledge. Shaykh al-Fattah rahimahullah, in the first chapter in his book, actually, he talks about rihla fi talab al-ilm. So the journey in seeking knowledge, rihla, we call it. So this rihla was a crucial part of any journey for anyone who's seeking knowledge. So it's part and parcel of his education. So they have to travel, they have to move and seek knowledge from different sources, different scholars, and so on. And the Shaykh rahimahullah mentioned here in chapter number 1 that the first one who was directed towards going and asking others to learn was Adam alayhi salam. When Allah created Adam, He asked him to go and greet the angels. And Allah said to him, greet them and see what they tell you. So he said, Assalamu alaikum, and he waited for them to reply, to learn from them. So the scholars commented on this narration by saying that he was the first one to be commanded to go and do a journey. Although it wasn't that long, I'm not sure how long was it, but so he greeted them and he waited for them to reply and to learn from them. And the second thing which Sheikh has mentioned here is the story, the very famous story of Musa alayhi salam with Al-Khadir, which we recite every Friday or Thursday night in Surah Al-Kahf. And so the story of Musa, he was in his community, and somebody approached him and he said, is there anyone more knowledgeable than you? And he's posing the question to Musa, and he said no. Then Allah directed Musa, and he said, yes, there is a person who is more knowledgeable than you. There is our servant Al-Khadir. Go and learn from him. And we know the rest of the story. So Musa alayhi salam, with his status, he's a Rasul. Of course, Al-Khadir wasn't a Rasul. We have some discussion about, was he a Nabi, a prophet or not? 50-50, the scholars into this. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimahullah, the great muhaddis and great Shafi'i scholar, he composed a book of 2 volumes on Al-Khadir himself, collected different narrations, etc. So he was into the conclusion that 50-50, some people, or these narrations suggesting that Al-Khadir was a prophet, some narrations says no, he wasn't. He was agreed upon across the board, no 50-50, 100%, that he was Abdun Salih, righteous servant of Allah Azza wa Jal. But was he a prophet? Disputed. Some people 50-50, as I said. Anyway, so, but definitely he wasn't a messenger. So messengerhood is above prophethood. With that in place, Allah directed Musa to go and learn from Al-Khadir. So, and it was a long distance. And the scholars commented here, they said, Musa alayhi salam, he traveled through the land, he traveled through the sea to go and meet Al-Khadir, which is a beautiful story actually. And the Sheikh, rahimahullah, he mentioned many stories. It's beautiful, very beautiful, what he collected in his collection, rahimahullah. And he mentioned among the companions, the first one was Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. So Abu Dharr al-Ghifari was away from Mecca, very far from Mecca. But he was searching for the truth, and he heard that there's somebody saying something in Mecca, and he wanted to see who's that person is, and he traveled a long distance to go to Mecca, and he couldn't see the Prophet ﷺ. They were sort of putting him under lockdown as us now. So he couldn't go out without being traced and these kind of things. So he was a bit hiding, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he was asking Abu Dharr, he said, where is this person who's saying some new things among you? They said, do you mean that As-Sabi', the one who left his the religion of his people? He said, yes. The moment he said yes, they pelted him and they stoned him, and he was full blood on his body until he fainted. And he said, I woke up and I was like a red statue. Then he washed himself in Zamzam, and he has nothing to eat, no one is willing to host him because he is asking for the Prophet, and they hate the Prophet ﷺ. So he said, I stayed 30 days, 30 nights there, just drinking from Zamzam until I became fat. This is what he's saying. Until I became fat and I have a big tummy from Zamzam. Until one night, I felt somebody around the Kaaba, 2 people, and it was the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr. And he was circulating, doing tawaf around the Kaaba and mentioning Allah's name. So he recognized that this should be him. And he approached him and he said, are you Muhammad? And he said, who you are? He said, I'm Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, I'm from Ghifar, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was listening to his story. And he said, this is what happened to me, and they pelted me, and I was sitting here, have no food, no nothing. And then Abu Bakr said, allow me, Ya Rasulullah, to host him. And he said, feel free. Then they went together with the Prophet ﷺ, and he said the first food I've eaten since a month was in Abu Bakr's house. So the story, if you want, in summary, it's a long story. It's a beautiful story. Go and read it. In summary, he traveled distances to seek the truth, to learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, he accepted Islam, by the way. I forgot to tell you about it. It goes without saying. He accepted Islam, and he was so happy with that until he went to the Kaaba, and he pronounced the Shahada in front of the Kaaba. And then people were mad about him, and they beat him until he fainted again. And then Abu Bakr came and he said, you know who that is? He's from Ghifar. And the moment he said he was from Ghifar, they were terrified, because Ghifar at that time was like the mafia in the Arab world. So you can't joke with them. They are brutal. They will just cut your path, that what you call it, like the motorway where you travel to do your business. They will cut it and then steal your money and make your life difficult. So they stopped beating him, and they didn't touch him afterwards. But here you go. We see this is the first journey from one of the companions of radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And as well, we see another story the Sheikh has mentioned here, rahimahullah, is the story of Jabir bin Abdullah. Jabir bin Abdullah, one of the very famous companions. His father was Abdullah bin Haram. As well, his father was a very famous companion, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Jabir bin Abdullah traveled a long journey. It took him a month to hear one hadith. To Abdullah bin Unais. Abdullah bin Unais, he heard one hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, which Jabir didn't hear. And no one knows this hadith but Abdullah bin Unais. So Jabir, he wants to learn this hadith. So he traveled for 1 month to hear this hadith from Abdullah bin Unais. And the story, as Imam Bukhari mentioned in his book Al-Adab al-Mufrad, that Jabir is saying, I have bought rahila or ba'iran, which is a camel, to travel on it. And I traveled for 1 month till I reached Abdullah bin Unais. And then I told the guard on the door, or the doorkeeper, tell Jabir or tell Abdullah that Jabir is waiting for him. And Abdullah bin Unais came running, and he said, Jabir bin Abdullah? Said yes. And he was so happy. He hugged him, and he welcomed him, and he said, what do you want? How can I help you? He said, it's one hadith I've heard that you heard from the Prophet ﷺ. I've never heard from the Prophet. And I was afraid that I might die or you might die, and I won't be able to hear this hadith. So you traveled all this distance just for one hadith? He said, yes. And he said, what's that hadith? And he narrated the hadith for him. And it was about the day of resurrection and how people will be resurrected naked, etc., and the rest of the hadith. And Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi commented on this. He was a great muhaddith. He said, this is one of the great narrations about the importance of the journey, rihla, in order to seek knowledge. If the companions, if the prophets, if the messengers are directed to seek and increase their knowledge. So no wonder why we see this appetite from the companions to seek knowledge from the Prophet ﷺ, and from the tabi'een, the successors who came afterwards, to seek knowledge as well, and from the followers to seek knowledge, and so on and so forth. Because of this very reason, that the importance of knowledge. So they will not spare anything in order to seek knowledge. They will spend their wealth, they will spend their valuables, they will sell everything in order to seek knowledge. And see what we have these days. We are not willing even to go online and attend a circle, let alone to travel and let alone to attend and see the difference between their high himma, high determination, and our low and laziness, and may Allah give us the high himma, inshallah. Imam Ibn Khaldun, whom I've mentioned a couple of times probably. Ibn Khaldun, the great philosopher and the great sociologist, and he is the father of sociology actually. He wrote in his book Al-Muqaddimah the importance, a chapter as well on the importance of journey in seeking knowledge. He's saying the knowledge, I'm paraphrasing, the knowledge is divided into different sections, and some of it you can learn through reading, some of it you can't learn through reading. You need to have experience, you need to have role models, you need to have face-to-face, you need to see, touch, feel, etc. So this is why you can't just learn through reading. As some people might think, I don't need anyone to teach me, I can learn by myself. Some of the knowledge you can definitely, but you definitely need the role model, the qudwa, to teach you. And this is where the importance of the sheikh and a scholar to learn from him or her, because it's not just a male-dominated arena. We have plenty of female scholars as well. And I've told many of you probably about the encyclopedia, which one of my friends, bless him, he started since 20 years and he already finished it. 50 volumes, al-Muhaddithat, about female scholars in hadith. It's a collection. He collected plenty of scholars and he summarized many of their biographies and he put it in these 50 volumes. Inshallah, it will be printed soon. Because it's so big, it needs big funding to do that. And for those who are interested, there's an introduction for that book you can buy online through Amazon and probably other online sources. It's about the female scholars, al-Muhaddithat. You can find it for Sheikh Akram al-Nadwi, Barakallah fi. And the Sheikh here mentioned as well a beautiful story about Baqi bin Makhlad. Baqi bin Makhlad, he is one of the special stories actually. I would like you to read the details of the story later, inshallah, with your own time. Baqi bin Makhlad, Let me find his biography. He's from Andalus, from Spain today, from Andalus. Rahimahullah ta'ala. And he is the great scholar of Andalus at that time. Imam al-Zahabi wrote about his biography. Many other scholars wrote about his biography. He was born in 201. He passed away 276. So to summarize his story, which is an interesting story actually, he traveled from Andalus, from Spain, to Sham, and he traveled as well to Baghdad and many other places, many other places. But these are the most two important places which he received knowledge from. And the journey, because he wasn't that wealthy and he has no means to travel on but on his foot. So he traveled on his feet it took him the journey around 15 to 20 years, as Fuad Zazkin, rahimahullah, he mentioned this in his book. On his foot, traveled walking from Spain to Baghdad. If I were to tell you, come from central London to my house, you will be saying, yeah, I'll take the bus, I'll take a cab, I'll take I don't know what. He has no means for that, but anyway, he was willing to travel on his feet. You see the high determination in him. The story didn't end here. It has many ajib issues in the story, miraculous issues or very strange, very unbelievable issues. He said, the moment I reached Baghdad to meet Imam Ahmad, to learn from him, because this journey is to learn from Imam Ahmad. He is the great Imam of his time. So he went to Imam Ahmad to learn from him, to hear the hadith from him. Imam Ahmad was sort of under lockdown as well. A political decision from the governor or the Khalifa at that time, because of the test for the Ummah, not just Imam Ahmad, from between Mu'tazila and Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the clash which they have. Many of you don't know what I'm saying, but you can read about Fitnat Khalq al-Quran, the test of is the Quran has been created or not. Big discussion, big issues, and Imam Ahmad was the mountain who faced all these winds, and he alhamdulillah won against all the odds. He was very strong with Allah's support, and he stopped this after 2-3 Khalifas actually in place until Allah. It took him around 20 years to get out of this fitna and test. But nevertheless, he was under restriction. You cannot deliver hadith, you cannot do anything, otherwise you will be in prison. So he was like in-house prison. So Baqi bin Makhlad, he said, the moment I arrived into Baghdad, I've heard the news that Imam Ahmad is under house prison. So what shall I do? I just journeyed for 15 years, or I don't know how many years it took him at that time. What shall I do? I went to the mosque, I prayed, I asked for his house, where is his house? And then they directed me where is his house, and he went to his house, and he was sitting on the door. And then after a while, Imam Ahmad walked out of his house, and he saw this man, and he said, who are you? He said that this is Baqi al-Makhlad coming from Andalus. He said, what is Andalus? Is it Africa? He said, no, it's far from Africa. It's Andalus is on the other side. It's I take the sea and the boat, and it was a long journey. I just came to hear from you the hadith. He said, I can't deliver any hadith at the moment. Under restriction. So he said, but what shall I do? I have to learn from you. I just traveled all these miles to learn your hadith. And he said, what about if I was to disguise as a beggar and put the beggar's clothes on me, and I will come every day on your doorstep and say what they say. So they have a statement that beggars usually, it depends, each country they have some common statement. For instance, give me for Allah's sake, lillah, fi sabilillah, these kind of things, they have some statements. He said, I will say what the beggars will say. I'll stay on your doorstep until you come out. And then you tell me 1, 2, 3 hadith, I write it down and I go. And I'll do this every day. And Imam Ahmad agreed. He said, be careful not to let anyone see you. He said, definitely yes. And this is what happened. Every day he will come as a beggar disguised, and he will say Lillah or something like that. Imam Ahmad will come out and then narrate the hadith for him. And he will say, I will put the papers and the pen under my clothes. And then I will write down what I hear from Imam Ahmad, whatever Allah facilitate, 2, 3 hadith, 4 hadith, more or less, and then I will go. And it was like this for a while, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the tyrant Khalifa at that time, and the Khalifa changed, and then Imam Ahmad was free to go to the mosque and deliver the hadith. And he said, I was still with Imam Ahmad. Then Imam Ahmad cleared the space on his right side for me to be on his right side. And I was so pleased with that. I was his very close student. I was listening to him, and he would recite for me, and I would recite for him, and it was a lovely journey with all the pain, with all the difficulties, but it pays off. And that's it, actually. I will finish with this story. We have plenty of other stories, but I will open the floor for you just to show you how determined they were, and how they have this passion and love for knowledge, which is so important. But we need to push ourselves and have more determination and power and energy to seek more knowledge, inshallah ta'ala, which will make us closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, and appreciate the opportunity which Allah has given to us, and not to waste this. Because now you have the opportunity, you know, sometimes you will not be able to seek knowledge. You won't be able to attend any circle. You won't be able to hear anything. And the last bit of his story, rahimahullah, he said, I was once very ill, and I was living in a what you call it, bed and breakfast place, very low place, low budget place. I was so ill, and I couldn't go to attend the circle of Imam Ahmad. And Imam Ahmad knew I was ill. And the moment he knew, he just walked to that B&B. And everyone received Imam Ahmad, and everyone was saying, yes, this is the Imam of the Ummah. This is the great Imam Ahmad. He is coming to visit somebody here. Who's that person? And it was Baqi bin Makhlad. And he went to his room. His room was very small room, and Baqi bin Makhlad says Imam Ahmad has a big crowd with him. Many students with pens, they want to write down everything Imam Ahmad is saying. Even if he's breathing, they will write down that he's breathing. And Imam Ahmad visited him, and he made dua for him, and I mentioned a couple of statements which he repeated later. And then he left. And he said the moment he left, everybody in that hotel or hostel, he started bringing a new duvet for me, new mattress, new pillow, offering some food and serving me. And I was like a prince. Why? Because of the visit of the righteous Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. And subhanAllah, plenty of other stories similar to this one, but this one was very amazing. And the collection of the hadith, which Baqi bin Makhlad, by the way, received from Imam Ahmad, he wrote a book, Baqi bin Makhlad, Musnad. He wrote a Musnad. Although Imam Ahmad, he has his own Musnad. But Baqi bin Makhlad, he received from Imam Ahmad, he received from many other scholars. And he wrote a Musnad, big book called Musnad Baqi bin Makhlad. And the scholars always refer to this book. Unfortunately, in today's time, we lost the manuscript. We cannot find the manuscript. And I always make dua with many of our teachers and many of our friends. Yet, Ya Rab, facilitate for us to find the manuscript of Baqi bin Makhlad's Musnad. It might be somewhere in Germany. We went to Germany and we tried to find the manuscript. We couldn't. It might be somewhere else. It's a big book, by the way, and it's a very important book. The old scholars, they saw the book, they narrate from that book, they wrote from that book, but afterwards, the manuscript, at least for us in this era, we couldn't find. Inshallah, hopefully we can find it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا سامحنا وعافنا واعف عنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم تب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم بارك لنا فيما رزقتنا وزدنا علما وفهما وعملا وفقها في الدين يا رب العالمين اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولعلمائنا ولأزواجنا وذرياتنا وأحبابنا والمسلمين وارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا وارفع الوباء والبلاء عنا وعن العباد والبلاد يا رب العالمين صلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين آمين الحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته